the two doctors. Nice.
Very nice indeed. And by the way, in case you haven't seen it before, ta-da, and the pink is consistent. Okay, well, welcome to all of you. And I have to tell you what a real pleasure it was for me to read this book, because it is filled with wit, wisdom, and common sense. It is amazing to me how this little girl from Frankfurt named Ruth Siegel, how that little girl became Dr. Ruth, and this is a book that gives us quite a bit of information about it. I want to start by asking, of all of your achievements, and they are numerous, of what are you the most proud?
4 grandchildren.
Okay.
And when I show the picture, Annette, you and your late mother, whom I adored, Cecile, you will understand that very well, and 92nd Street Y audiences will understand that I was an orphan at the age of 10 and a half, sent to Switzerland. We'll talk a little about it. But when I can show that picture, I know that Hitler lost and I won.
Wow. I do understand that. Even though I have personally never had children, I always get the extended pleasure when people that I care about are so proud of theirs and of their grandchildren. In your book, I keep getting the feeling that no matter what life threw at you, and it was a lot, losing your parents, your whole family, ending up through the Kinder transport in Switzerland, going to Israel, becoming a sniper with the Haganah.
Tell them if they don't ask good questions, I can still put 5 bullets in the red circle.
It seems that whatever life threw at you, you have found the resources within yourself to say, I'm not giving into this. I'm not going to let horrible things define me. And I'm curious where you think that comes from. In other words, is that something that you developed because you had to have a tough shell? Or do you think that some of us are in fact born, even genetically, that we're predisposed to somehow say, I'm not letting this, I'm going to fight it?
I think, first of all, you are an educator, I'm an educator. Very important for me, this question, because I believe that I can have this joie de vivre and this zest for life because of the early socialization. The early years of my life in Frankfurt am Main, I was an only child. I had loving parents, and I had particularly a wonderful grandmother living with us. She had nothing else to do but take care of me. My mother helped my father in the business, and I believe that those values and the beliefs and the Jewish growing up in an Orthodox family in those early years certainly helped me to overcome those difficulties, because the early years set the stage. And that grandmother was like, your mother very often reminded me of her, because she was a widow. I never knew that husband of hers, but she was full of joie de vivre. The children's song, all of the children's songs from Frankfurt, from the synagogue helped me, and the children's songs from the German background, like Hänschen Klein. Now, some of these songs later on had some special meaning. For example, when I hear Tzadik Katoma, that's from the Friday night service, I can feel my hand in my father's hand going to synagogue. And what I can remember, Annette, is that he carried a little money in the vest pocket, because he wouldn't have carried more because it's Shabbat. He bought me an ice cream. No wonder that I love ice cream. So there are certain things of my background, of my childhood, that I believe helped me through all the difficulties later in life.
I do want to share with everyone, because I'm guessing that most people here did not have the good fortune to be where I was around March 22nd. when at Avery Fisher Hall, the Zamir Chorale honored Dr. Ruth. And there was such a moving moment when the conductor Moti Lazar had, it seemed like hundreds of young people on that stage were singing. He even brought you up to conduct. Right. And it was specifically the piece of music, Tsati Katamar, that Dr. Ruth had said was this meaningful memory from her childhood.
And I have to tell you, don't tell Mati Lazar and Vivian that I told you that, okay? Don't say that. I have to tell you that, of course, I cheated a little bit. Here I am. I don't know how to conduct, but I put my hand and I let Moti Lazar, the maestro, conduct. I gave up control, which is not easy for me. And I let him conduct, and we just did it now, 3 weeks ago, in Kfar Saba in Israel. With 7 groups of children, about 300 children, Israeli children, and I did it again. And those melodies of the childhood, all of you people who are listening to us will remember some of those melodies, and they give you comfort that even if bad things happen, in French, because Annette speaks French, in French there's a song, Demain il fera bon sur la grande route. Tomorrow it'll be a good day. Today there is wind and rain and storm and horrible things are happening in the world, but hang in there. Tomorrow the clouds will pass and the sun will shine again.
And I'm getting the feeling, listening to you, that perhaps Judaism itself has played a very important shaping role, because when you describe, for example, the synagogue, or you're growing up in your family, I think that for any child who is taught and actually believes that he or she is part of something larger, in other words, that there is not just me in my room, there's a family, there's not just a family in my home, there's a synagogue, or it could be a church, and there is something that existed before me and hopefully will exist after me. And I'm guessing that Judaism, among other things, has given you that sense of continuity?
No question that my Jewish roots in an Orthodox Jewish family. Today I belong to a conservative and to a Reform synagogue. It's nice to belong to 2 synagogues, because if you are not at one, they think you are at the other one. In the Talmud, it says, in the Jewish tradition, that a lesson taught with humor is a lesson retained. I could not tell you a joke. Most jokes that I hear, I don't understand. But I can hear a question and hear something that is humorous. So students in your class, the same thing, will remember. But I have to tell you something else. Having been an orphan, having survived, I call myself an orphan of the Holocaust, not a survivor, because I was not in a camp. 1.5 million, everybody here knows that 1.5 million Jewish children perished. It behooves those of us who survived, we have to do something. And in Hebrew it's called to help Tikkun Olam, to repair the world. I did not know that that would be by talking about sex all day long. But I knew that I have to do something to justify, to some extent, to myself, how come I'm alive. And it's interesting, I did a study of the other children who were with me in the orphanage. The girls went into the helping profession. They went to become social workers, nurses, something to help others. None became a sex therapist. I was very lucky. That's a different story.
I think it's not just luck. You are, may I say, unique.
So I also was very fortunate with all of the difficulties, with having been in the Haganah, with having been badly wounded. That's not why I'm short. I would have been short anyway, in order to have the same size like you.
Thank you.
But I was fortunate that I could stand on shoulders of giants. And for somebody short like me and you, very important to stand on shoulders of giants to look further. So I was fortunate. In this country, there was Kinsey, Masters and Johnson, Dr. Helen Singer Kaplan, who trained me at Cornell Medical School. So I was very fortunate to get the best training that anybody could get. And now, when I look at you, and I say, here she is, the director of the undergraduate studies of film at Columbia University, and I'm at Teachers College, where I got my doctorate, teaching my third year after having taught 5 years Yale, where you went, and Princeton. So we are very fortunate, both of us.
I so agree with you. And in fact, that leads me to a question that is related to the importance of Judaism, because one of the most moving little speeches that I've heard over the past few years was that of Elie Wiesel. And it was at the New York Public Library maybe 3-4 years ago. The Elie Wiesel Foundation for Humanity was honoring a lot of people, I think maybe Tom Hanks and Sting, but he spoke about the importance of gratitude. And he said that that was the key thing from Judaism, that every day the ability to say thank you was primary to existing in this world in a good way. And I keep hearing, as tonight, as among other times, I'm fortunate this, and every day I say how lucky I am. And I'm wondering, is gratitude a necessary point of departure?
Very. In the orphanage, all of us, not just me, but it says in my diary almost every other day that we have to be grateful that we are in Switzerland and not Holland, Belgium, or France, where the other children did not survive. I'm also very grateful to the Allied forces, Americans, Australians, New Zealand, Canadians, who have entered World War II. If they had not entered World War II, I would not be alive, because Hitler would have taken Switzerland. So that attitude of thanking, if you thank your, what is called in Hebrew, goral, of what has happened to you, or if you say thank you that I'm Jewish, which I'm very Jewish, that gratitude is very much part of it. Later, I'm very grateful. I have the best daughter, the best son, the best daughter-in-law, the best son-in-law. I list them all. I told you already about my 4 grandchildren. So there is something about that being grateful that has an obligation to do something for others. I didn't know I would be a sex therapist, but I knew that I would be an educator, like you are educating at Columbia, that I would do something that is not just earning money and for myself. And for that, again, I'm very grateful. And I'm also grateful that you were willing to interview me.
How does one ever say no to the opportunity to be in Dr. Ruth's company, whether publicly or privately? And I do want to underline that even though I'm emphasizing Judaism as a source of gratitude, faith, identity, one doesn't have to be Jewish. I mean, one of the things that I love to teach in my classes at Columbia, the films of Krzysztof Kieślowski, this Polish director who was not at all Jewish, and who in the Decalogue and Blind Chance, a few of his films, one of the repeated lines is, life is a gift. I think most of us in the United States in this day and age, we take a lot of things for granted. For us, many of us who've been lucky enough never to have our lives tested the way that our ancestors had to, we don't realize that it's not a given that we were born, that we were brought up well and happy, that we have money, food, etc. And sometimes in movies, I realize that we have to remind one another that life is a gift and we have to make the most of it. And that can come from other religions. It can also come sometimes for atheists, as long as there's a sense that there's something beyond the self.
Right.
So I'm also wondering, to what extent Buddhism may be a little bit overlapping with some of the things that I read in your book. I've personally become very interested in Buddhism over the past 7 years or so, even though it's terribly superficial. But the refusal of negativity, in other words, one of the things that you mention actually quite a few times in your book, page 5, 100, 189, 190.
They all have to get the book to get the numbers.
That's right. But the line, you have to put those negative emotions aside because life is too precious to waste even one day of it. Mm-hmm. And so, have you ever studied Buddhism? Have you ever been attracted to it?
I have to tell you, Buddhism is not for me. Yoga is not for me. You have to keep quiet. How could I keep quiet? You have to sit there, you have to contemplate your navel. Not for me. However, my Chinese massage guy went, and I can't talk to him because his English is very poor, so 2 hours a week I keep quiet. He went to China. He brought me a Buddha, on the one side a Buddha, on the other side a turtle. Now I'll tell you why I love that. My next book, August 4th, is a children's book about turtles. I have a collection of turtles, not live ones, toy turtles, I mean pins and things. A turtle that's very important for the 92nd Street Y. A turtle, if it stays in one place, it's safe. Nothing can happen to that turtle. It carries its house on its back, it's safe. If that turtle wants to move, it has to take a risk. It has to stick its neck out. It could get hurt, but it doesn't move without taking a risk and sticking its neck out. So much for Buddhism for me. But anybody who does it, I know plenty of people, friends, who do it, let them have a good time. I tried it. I did that guided, whatever, what is it called? Guided, whatever. Meditation. I did it for 9.5 minutes. One time, I kept my mouth shut. Now I have to tell you something. There was a guy, he's married, so I'm not telling his name. It's not in this country, it's in some other country. And I thought to myself, now if he were not married, with this guided meditation, with his sexy voice, with his constantly talking, that's really sexual arousal, but I didn't tell him. So anybody who wants to do guided meditation, have a great time, but don't do it for the whole day. Please, do take some action, do something for somebody else.
Right, no. And I wouldn't want to misrepresent myself, or Buddhism for that matter. I went once, to hear a wonderful German woman. She was in her 70s, if I'm not mistaken. This was in Massachusetts. But the one thing that she said, which I keep finding on the pages of your book, that we cannot avoid negative things in our lives. It's impossible to go through life and nothing bad is going to happen.
Everybody has a mother-in-law who they don't like. You're right.
Since you are a mother-in-law, I'll let you get away with that. But she said, and you suggest the same thing, that we are capable of going, you know what? I'm not going there. Mm-hmm. And her line was, negativity, I don't need you now. That we are capable of, we can't control what happens, but we are capable of controlling how we react to it. Right. And that if we say, I'm not going into that angry, vengeful, whatever place, I'm just moving on to something else. And I think you have come to the same kind of wisdom.
Not only that, I tell people, look, I have been now a widow for 16 years. You knew my late husband. And I tell everybody, very difficult, no question. You have to take time to mourn. But then you have to get that inner strength of doing something with your life. And if you have a friend who every day only complains, drop him or her and find somebody else. That's exactly, take that action by saying, I need to protect myself. Yes, I can be sad, but I have to do something to help somebody that will help me.
Okay. Now, I was reminded in reading your book that the doctor of your name is actually not MD, but a doctor in education, and it is clear that your basic identity is that of educator. Yes. And you mentioned it just now yourself. What does teaching at Columbia University Teachers College add to your life?
Every place that I go, when I give a talk, when I'm going to get the questions later, for my students, I learn. It also says in the Talmud that you learn from your students. Every week that I teach, I learn something. When I was at Yale and Princeton, I went for the whole day. I went to other people's lectures. I didn't just go and give my lecture. That would have been not interesting. But especially in seminars, you learn from your students. You create that community of learners, and you become one of them. That's why as long as they let me, I just turned 87. I don't know how long they will let me. I will teach. And you are right, Annette. I really think of myself more as an educator than a therapist. I did plenty of psychosexual therapy. I helped plenty of people. I told some couples, don't waste time with me, go to see an attorney. When I realized that they really hate each other. But basically, deep down, I really am an educator.
Yeah, I can feel that. And you've written, Susan said, 37 books, which is astounding considering how many other things you do, but I'm going to get to Pierre Lehoux in just a moment, because I think that he's a very important part of your professional and personal life.
No, not personal. He has a wife.
No.
Professional.
I meant in the sense of
Professional.
family, extended family, because I mean, in my own professional world, there are certain people that become far more than allies in the workplace. They become part of your daily life. I was almost pleasantly surprised to see Amazon publishing, because that's something relatively new for some of us who've been writing books for traditional publishers for many years. What made you go with Amazon publishing?
Okay. Number one, I want to explain about Pierre. I am not computer literate. I don't know how to type. In the orphanage in Switzerland, there was one typewriter in the office. Nobody permitted us to touch that. So I talk, and Pierre puts it on papers. Pierre is a co-author, and we work together for over 30 years. So I get the pages, I say, that doesn't sound right. And Pierre also signs with me as a co-author. So that's one aspect. And it's very interesting because I would not be sitting someplace alone in an office and write. Not only because I don't know how to type, I need that vis-a-vis. I need somebody to look at me and not the head like you do. So that's how I can do these books, by saying, that's what I want to do now. I tell you a secret how it came about. I went 2 years ago to a weekend with the big shot of Amazon. At that weekend, yes, and the weekend was in Santa Fe. At that weekend, you're not supposed to do any business. I am very Jewish. Don't tell me I'm sitting with these big shots, Amazon, not to do business. So I find the head, Jeff, another Jeff, I find the head whom I knew, because he was the head of the dummy books. I did Sex for Dummies.
Right.
I said, Jeff, let's go for a walk outside the camp. Outside the camp, I can do business. I said, I want to do this book. I want to do it with you, and give me an advance. I have no agent, no manager. Give me an advance. Within a week, he said yes. He gave me an advance, and now I tell you something funny. The book, it's interesting. I come from Germany, as you all know. The book was just sold at an auction in Germany for much more money than my advance.
All right.
So I was very happy. But it came about because I took the initiative. I don't wait for somebody to say, would you like to do television? I did 450 television shows. But every time, before the series was over, I went to the big shots and I said, I love what I'm doing. I want to do more. And I made suggestions, and we did more. Now, it's not that I didn't make money. I made more money than I ever dreamt that I would have, but it wasn't the money aspect. I was very happy to do the radio program 10 years, every Sunday night. While all of you were playing, I was at WYNY, 30 Rockefeller Plaza, 10 to 12, and I have to tell you something, Annette. With that radio program, Sexually Speaking, you are on the air, I provided foreplay to a lot of people. They went into their cars at 10, they got home by 12, they had good sex. So now that I'm involved in all kind of charities, the Museum of Jewish Heritage, all kind of other charities, a scholarship at Columbia, at Hazamir, anybody who tells me they listen to me, I said, I provided you with foreplay. They have to say yes. I say, give me a little money, not for me, but for one of my charities. Pay for that foreplay.
La, 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 la. But I mean, it really does come through in the book, and also anyone who knows you. Well, my mother was very much like you. The world was not going to provide you with anything on a platter. You wanted something, you had to take a chance, a risk, an action, and just go for it. And you've done that many, many times. I actually, well, I don't want to overgeneralize here, but given my own sense of myself, I know I have to walk faster in the street because I'm tiny. I have to take 3 steps for every 2 that my husband Mark takes. And I know that when I'm with tall people in any place, I have to move quickly to be able to get to the front. So I think that sometimes being diminutive gives you just, I mean, it's a Napoleon complex in the worst of cases, but in the best of cases, it just makes you more active.
But I have to tell you something. You are too young. But when you get to be 87, listen what happened to me 2 weeks ago in Jerusalem. I'm in a taxi with my daughter's sister-in-law, who is also my friend, Cindy. We go to the Wailing Wall, because I go every year to put my little paper in with a wish for good health for everybody who knows me. I talk to the guard, he knows me, Dr. Ruth, I speak Hebrew. I said to the taxi driver, let me talk to him. And I said to the guard, I'm almost 87. I'm a grandmother. Let the taxi go very near to the wall so that I can put my little piece of paper in. He said, go. Nearest, I've never been so near. When I get out of the taxi, he was waiting, I started to run. And then I said to myself, I can't do that. I told him I'm 87, I'm a grandmother. I can't suddenly run. I stopped, I had to walk slow. So you have to know a little bit how to use that excuse of age and being short. And look, the being short in my particular case, I think it helped me. Because when I started to be a sex therapist, I was never, not on television, not on radio, not in my office, I was never a threatening persona. I was that little Jewish woman who talks about orgasms and erections.
And the accent helped.
The accent helped.
I mean, you know, in all honesty.
I have to tell you something about the accent. It's in the book. Deborah Jo Rapp played me in the play Becoming Dr. Ruth, which Marc Saint-Germain, the playwright who wrote Freud's Last Session, wrote, and Pierre helped him because he had all of the data. And Deborah Jo Rapp, when I came to this country, they said, if you want to work here, if you want to teach here, you have to take speech lessons. At the time, I made $1 an hour, speech lessons. Who could pay for speech lessons? Deborah Jo Rapp had to take a speech coach to learn my accent. She did it very well. She won an award, right?
Yeah, no, I saw the play. It was actually a wonderful one-woman show, Becoming Dr.
So, and it's now going to be in Philadelphia. It goes around the country. So the one thing about being short, make the best of it. Don't sit there. I used to think, I told that in the diary, I used to think I'm ugly and that no man would ever look at me. Not bad. I had 3 husbands. But the last one, Fred Westheimer, was the real marriage. So it's not true, but short people sometimes have a little bit of that feeling that because they're so short, maybe they have to overcompensate.
Yeah,
right.
yeah. I'd also, at one point, the New York Times actually dubbed you Grandma Freud.
Right. You say that very nicely. You know why? Because they very often think that I'm from Vienna, because my accent is German, Swiss German, and then Hebrew, and then French. So it's a mixture. So they said, and then I talk about sex. Let me tell you that I say that. Freud was sexually illiterate. Freud did us women a tremendous disservice. Freud should have taken a class with me. Because Freud said terrible things about women's sexual satisfaction. So we have to bury those myths.
Well, let's just say that Freud was of his time and was ignorant about many things that you and others have in the interim brought to light.
And Americans here in this country, Masters and Johnson, Kinsey, Helen Singer Kaplan, who trained me at Cornell Medical School, we really have the best scientifically validated data about human sexual functioning that has ever been available. France has some good data. We have the best. But we need even more. We need even more research to help even more people.
Sure. Now, you mentioned that you kept a diary when you were in Switzerland or after Switzerland. There's so many details that you recall vividly in the book. Do you still keep a diary? I mean, when did you stop?
Mm-hmm. Very good question. I kept a diary to give me comfort, to console me. I was always worried that somebody would read the diary. So I wrote in stenography, some of it, which today I can't read anymore. However, the diary was very important, and for some reason, going from the kibbutz, then to Jerusalem, the war in Jerusalem, then to Paris, then to the United States, I kept those diaries with me. They kind of were a link to my past, a link to my parents. I copied some letters that they wrote me and some poems that my father wrote me, because he thought that if he writes it in poem, then the censorship would let it go through. So I have those diaries, and they really made up my very first autobiography. But there I did something which I would suggest to anybody. That was very difficult for me, because these were letters from my parents that really made me cry. I did go to a therapist. I said, somebody who understands the German Jewish background, I said, let's put all of that on paper, but let me discuss it with you. So I was never embarrassed to say, this is something I need help. Today, I don't keep a diary. However, I talk to Pierre 10 times a day, and I say, remember that, and remind me of this. So that's like, I have a walking diary.
A human diary.
I have a human diary, and I call him my Minister of Communications.
That's a great thing. Now, you are fond of quoting a line that is actually Sherry Lansing's, "Don't retire, rewire," which I find rather delightful myself.
And I tell that it was coined by Sherry Lansing, right, the first woman of a major film studio. I use it every day because that's what I believe in. But I give her credit.
Absolutely.
You have to give credit where credit is due. But I believe in that. Don't retire, rewire.
Now, if I can just push that a little bit, can you give us a concrete piece of advice, an example? How would one go about rewiring? In other words, what are some of the ways that you yourself or have seen others succeed in this way?
For example, if you finish with your position at a job, don't just sit home. Don't just sit home and say, I have nothing to do, and complain. See what is it that interests you. Maybe you want to volunteer at a hospital. Maybe you want to go and take classes. Maybe you want to do something that you have never done before. Maybe a musical instrument. Do something that gives you pleasure, but that also keeps you occupied. That makes sure that you get up in the morning and you have something to do. And like what you said in the very beginning, I do suggest to people to stay away from negative people. If somebody only wants to complain, then you have to say, have a good day, sorry, I'm busy, I have to run. And find yourself people that you can share your experiences with.
I understand that.
Yeah.
We're going to take questions in a moment from the audience, but I did want to go back to how I first met you because it leads to a question. We actually met 30 years ago when Dr. Ruth was hired to act in a motion picture, a fiction film called One Woman or Two that starred Gérard Depardieu and Sigourney Weaver.
And me.
And third billing was Dr. Ruth Westheimer. And it's true that Daniel Vigna, the director who had done The Return of Martin Guerre, originally wanted for the part that Dr. Ruth played Linda Hunt, who had won an Oscar for The Year of Living Dangerously.
Right.
And it turned out that she was not available.
Thank God.
And I remember Daniel Vigna asking me, do you know this Dr. Ruth? I'm thinking of her for this film. And I said, who doesn't know Dr. Ruth? I said, I have no idea if she can act, but she is a wonderful character. I don't know her personally. So finally, Dr. Ruth gets the part, and Danielle Vigna invited me to the shoot one day in New York, and I met you when you were jogging around a rooftop. That was our first
meeting. With a secretary. I dictated, I loved that. It wasn't Pierre, it was a woman secretary. I dictated. And Daniel Vigna, a brilliant regisseur, and Gérard Depardieu in his good days. In his good days, before he gave up his citizenship, he was wonderful. He was wonderful company. He was a self-made man, and when he was not drinking, he was good company and a good conversationalist. The film never did anything, but it was on at the Paris 1 week with a red carpet, Champs-Élysées in Paris with a red carpet, and one scene was at the Sorbonne, Salle Richelieu, where I once had flunked an exam in physiology. I love that scene. Here I'm a philanthropist, I'm giving a speech in that wonderful Sorbonne, and then Gérard Depardieu shows that woman, the first woman ever, and she has Negroid features. There is a big fight. The film never made it. However, 1 month it was on cable, and I still watch it sometimes with pleasure.
Well, that leads to my question, would you like to do more acting?
I can only do acting if I don't learn, I have to learn by heart. Oh. For example, in that film, I had somebody, with the cue cards, but also Daniel Vigna, I loved him, but I didn't listen to him. You have to be like the turtle. He wanted an elephant to run this way and me to run towards the elephant in one scene. I said, I'm not crazy. He said, the elephant knows, or the thing, not to her. I said, I know, but the elephant does not know. I went over to the trainer of the elephant. I speak French. I said, do me a big favor. You will have good sex for the rest of your life. I will make believe that I'm running, and then you move the elephant aside. Nobody will ever know the truth. That's what happened.
Wow. You could be a director too.
I wasn't about to run into that elephant. I could only play a part if somebody would have cue cards.
So, or allow you to improvise.
Or to improvise.
A part that would be similar to who you are in life, and you could, because who knows, there are people, every day I hear from students and aspiring filmmakers, they're always looking for some kind of kernel of a great idea, of a concept, of a story, Why not think about something that Dr. Ruth could appear in? And also,
only if you are the director.
No, I don't direct. I'm too grateful, happy, lucky, doing what I do, which is teaching, writing, presenting films at the Y. So I have wonderful students who should direct, but I'm not one of them. You've also made a lot of documentary films. And before we now in a moment raise the lights. Why? I mean, you've had so many wonderful identities as an educator, as a sex therapist. You had your TV show, your radio show. What made you decide to make documentaries?
I go to Israel every single year because my loyalty, I live here, I'm not moving, but my loyalty is very much to Israel. I did a documentary about the Ethiopian Jews, and I like doing documentaries. I raised the money by promising people, give me money, you'll have good sex. I did one on the Druze, on the Bedouin. Now I did a new one with a book that goes with each one, on the Cherkesim. And the reason I do that is not about sex. I talk about their family life. Because like I told you before, family for me, because I didn't have one after the age of 10 and a half, is something very important. So I'm very interested in how do these other people who live in Israel or are a minority, how do they date, not about sex, but how do they find partners, and about family life. For example, I did one with the Druze. Here they have 2 wives in this particular village. One house here, one house there. The Druze, I speak Hebrew, he speaks Hebrew. He says to me, one night he has to spend with that wife and one night with this. If they both love him, if he is 1 minute late when it's her turn, she wants to know where were you. So I wanted to show that all of these feelings of jealousy, of possessiveness, of how to raise children, in a complicated way, I wanted to show how universal. But it's very interesting, I always go back to that concept of the family.
Yeah.
That's because I didn't have one. But now I have a son who is a big shot professor in Canada, who writes books about citizenship. I have a daughter who has a doctorate from Teachers College, Columbia. I have these 4 grandchildren that I told you already about. I have friends like Annette. Not bad.
Well, we are all the more grateful for it. Now, I have loads more questions that I would be happy to ask. However, I know that there are a lot of people here tonight who want the opportunity to speak directly to you and to ask you questions as well. We even have microphones on either side. So if anybody
Ask Jeff Tabak to ask me a question. My good friend.
Yeah, we
the best
could do that
attorney
too.
in town.
And if anyone else besides the hand-picked ones wish to raise a question and a hand, we are welcome to that. And I think I saw one in the back, and then another one off the aisle in the middle on this side. So we'll start in the back there, and then the woman who's second from the aisle wearing a very nice shiny white thing, and then we'll take it from there.
Hi, Dr. Westheimer. Oh, such an honor. I have a couple of questions. One, have you ever thought of coming out with a line of blazers? Because you always look fantastic.
Have you ever thought of coming out with a line of blazers?
Yes.
These jackets that you wear.
Wait. Very good idea. Bring me somebody tonight.
Okay.
I will sign a contract. I have an attorney here.
Yes. And, okay, that's great. Second is, what do you do besides with your family and friends? What do you do for fun? I would like to know that.
Besides family and friends, what do you do for fun?
Okay.
Yes.
Fortunately, being a widow and having the ability, I live in Washington Heights, I'm not moving, but New York is the best place for somebody who can move around, who is healthy, because I'm out every single night. Either at a benefit, I'm going to the theater on Wednesday night, I go a lot to Philharmonic at Lincoln Center. But nobody can call me before 10 o'clock in the morning so that I can be out at night and can sleep my 8 hours. And I'm very fortunate, my daughter lives 10 minutes from me. I get to Ottawa quite a bit.
And I'm going to add something Dr. Ruth, even though she claims to not know much about movies, she'll say that to you, but she goes to a lot of movies. She comes very often to Real Pieces here at the 92nd Street Y.
I come a lot to your section.
And enjoys movies, and then really enjoys coming backstage and meeting the famous actors. And, and they, believe it or not, are far more excited to meet her than she is to meet them. But I know that
I met the last one. I met Meryl Streep because of you.
That was different. That was the premiere of, what was the film? Meryl Streep and Tommy Lee Jones, married couple. Steve Carell was the shrink. Hope Springs. When I got invited to the premiere, I realized, I have to bring Dr. Ruth. She's got to see this movie. So we went to they invited you, fine. I suggested they invited you. And at the party afterwards, I see Meryl Streep, and I go, yeah. So, Meryl Streep had been a guest downstairs in Real Pieces before, so I brought Dr. Ruth to Meryl Streep and introduced them.
I have a picture.
That was a very nice
Let me tell you something that you don't know. I got invited at the last moment. I met the CEO of the Belmont race track at a television. He said, do you want to come to the race on Saturday? I said, sure. And I took a car service. I went there. Guess what? I haven't washed my face since. I got kissed on this side and this side by Bill Clinton. This Saturday. I don't wash my face. So, but that's an example of at the last moment being asked, I didn't know this man before, Chris, the CEO, being asked, I didn't have anybody to go with. I said, it doesn't matter. I went, and I had a great time. I even have a picture with a Pierre with whom, from the play, the four Jersey Boys. You see why I need Pierre? Jersey Boys. The general from the highest guy from West Point, who knows that I have been teaching at West Point, and I'm going to teach this fall a seminar. So I meet this guy with 40 medals, and he also gave me a kiss. I want you to know.
So if I understand correctly, your basic answer to this question is be open to all the possibilities.
Yes.
And if you can't get there yourself, just take a taxi or a car service.
Absolutely.
Make sure
They sent me back in a car.
That's good. But you, we're going to take the question from the woman on the aisle, but you knew Bill Clinton before because you mentioned in the book.
He told the story, and it's in the book. It's true. Many years ago, I gave a talk in Arkansas. My daughter's project, Hippie, Home Instruction Program for Parents of Preschool Youngsters, was in Arkansas. I was in Arkansas giving a lecture, and the fellow who was responsible for me said, do you want to meet the governor? I said, sure. I walk in, I see this good-looking guy. He gets up, he says, Dr. Ruth, he knew me. And I said, you ought to run for president. I will vote for you. The rest is history. And Bill Clinton, Saturday night, told that story at his entourage at the racetrack.
Okay, we have the question right here.
Okay, Dr. Ruth, I want to thank you. I learned so much during this hour, and you are truly an educator. Do you mind telling us about the Haganah?
No? Okay. In 1947-48, I was a student in Jerusalem. I had left the kibbutz because I figured I have to learn something. I can't pick tomatoes and olives for the rest of my life. And it wasn't an act of heroism on my part. All of us participated in some way in the Haganah, in some way in the defending of the state. And I was trained to be a sniper. I don't know how come I became a sniper, but I can still, but I don't do it anymore, put 5 bullets in a red circle. And I went with my grandson Ari to a country fair many years ago, before Columbine. Since Columbine, I wouldn't touch a gun. And there was a pistol, water pistols. I said, Ari, shall we do it? He said, yes. I shot, and we came home with 12 stuffed animals and a goldfish. And my daughter Miriam didn't want me to come into the apartment. What's she going to do with 12 stuffed animals? So for some reason, I have that capacity. I don't know how come. All of us were in some sort of defense. I was very badly wounded. On my 20th birthday, June 4th, 1948, a cannonball came into the girls' residence called Beta Chalutzot in Jerusalem, exploded in the hallway, and the shrapnels went through both my legs. That's not why I'm short. I would have been short anyway. But I was badly wounded, and it took quite some time for me to learn to walk again. And it tells in the book, I was willing to give a little bit of my private life. I fell in love, thank God, at the hospital with a wonderful, good-looking Romanian nurse who actually was studying in Romania first to be a physician. And I made believe, wasn't true, that I couldn't use my hands. Wasn't true. They put me on a bookshelf because there were no beds. And I made believe that I couldn't eat by myself, so that he had to feed me. He also carried me outside to get some fresh air. And I then slowly recovered.
Yeah.
I want to tell you something about, because of the shooting. I'm still on the board of the Y in Washington Heights. I was the president for about 11 years. I never missed a board meeting, but the director, Marty Englisher, sometimes had to say, we have to switch the date because I had something to do. But the police and us had a very good rapport. We made a breakfast every year to say thank you to the police, not to ask for anything, but to say thank you. So the police always wanted me to go to a shooting range. And I said, okay, one day I will. I don't have time right now. Since Columbine, and all of you know what happened, I wouldn't touch it. I wouldn't touch a gun. So I'm concerned about that part of our country.
I agree. But I do find it interesting that someone who put her own body on the line and learned to shoot and was in fact shot herself, then devoted her life to, shall we say, making love, not war. In other words, that you really went completely into the opposite, namely the physical, embodied existence, but the body is something to be understood, cherished, and used well.
And there is something in the Jewish tradition that says, turn your plowshares, and don't make war anymore.
Right. It seems for me very
Interesting.
continuous. We have one right down here, and then a woman in the third row.
Hello, Dr. Ruth.
Everybody applaud Mark.
No, don't.
He gave a wonderful lecture in my class at Columbia about the family in film. And he's her husband. Too bad. Too bad, but he's her husband.
The Bruce Jenner transition to Caitlyn Jenner has opened up a whole area of conversation. Today on NPR, in addition to hearing you on the Leonard Lopate show, I also heard a report about a child, 9 years old, who was born a female and, as of the third grade, is taking on the identity as a male. What's your feeling about it? How young, about the whole situation, which
Mark,
we're
I
trying
want
to
to tell you
process?
something. I haven't heard that, but I want to tell you something, Mark. I'm never embarrassed to say, I don't know. When they ask me about that, what's the name, who now became a woman?
Bruce Jenner, Caitlyn.
Yes, I say I have no comment because I just don't know. We don't know enough about all of these issues that it makes headlines because everybody needs sensation. And I am never embarrassed to say I just don't know. Next question.
In the third row there. We're going to give you a microphone just to make sure that everyone hears.
Firstly, happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah.
My question is, who is going to talk to your grandchildren about sex?
Who is what?
Who's going to talk to your grandchildren about sex?
Not me.
Not you. You're not going to play any role in that.
Okay, two things I want to tell you. it's one, some of it is here. Two things fast. I didn't permit my late husband, Fred, to come to any of my talks because he would sit where Mark is sitting. He would raise his hand. I wouldn't be able to ignore him. He would tell all of you, don't listen to her, it's all talk. I made one exception. Fred Westheimer loved Diane Sawyer. When Diane Sawyer, many years ago, came to my apartment in Washington Heights, where I still live, with 60 Minutes, I didn't have the heart to say to Fred, you can't be home. So Fred is sitting where Annette is sitting. On the couch, we're sitting together. Diane Sawyer is sitting here. The cameras are rolling. And Diane Sawyer, and I have it on tape. Diane Sawyer says, Mr. Westheimer, how is your sex life? To which Fred said, the shoemaker's children don't have shoes. It's a true story. So, my grandchildren's sex education is the job of my children, not my job. But I can answer any other questions that you have.
Let's see, I don't actually see if there's one. Okay, we have on the right-hand side in the second row, and then towards the back, there are two hands right after.
Hi.
Hi.
So my daughter just got out of the Israeli army, and she has a photo with you in Israel not long ago. So she was very excited to meet you. Out of all the areas of therapy, what made you decide to be a sex therapist as opposed to family or?
Okay. Fortunately for me, I had a job in public health, Columbia University, up on 168. And fortunately for me, the money on that research project ran out. It was a government-funded project. The money ran out. I needed a job. So I did get an offer to be a research assistant at a project at Planned Parenthood of New York City. I took it. I thought these people are crazy. They only talk about sex, not about politics, not about religion, not about the weather. 24 hours later, I decided, oops, what an interesting subject matter. I was the head of a research outfit that followed 2,000 women in East Harlem, Black and Puerto Rican women, and I trained paraprofessionals to be family planning counselors. I used that data for my doctoral dissertation. I first wanted to use my doctoral dissertation expanding on my master's thesis of what happened to the children who left Germany with me and were in Switzerland, and what happened to them. I did a master's. I wanted to expand on that. When I saw the good-looking, Yale-trained sociologist who was the head of the seminar of doctoral dissertation, by the time my turn came to say what my doctoral, Goslin is his name, David Goslin, Goslin. By the time it came my turn, I knew he would be interested in sex. He would not be interested in World War II and orphans of the Holocaust. I switched my topic to the topic of the Planned Parenthood, following 2,000 women and their story. I got my doctorate very fast in 1970, and he was very interested in my dissertation. We are still good friends.
Good. Yes, there were, I think it was, yes, and then there's one 2 rows behind, and then somebody closer to this aisle.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ruth. This has been an interesting talk, I think, for all of us, and also humorous, and that's great that you bring that to tonight's discussion. I had a sort of specific question to myself that I think some people in the room will share, or they know somebody. Being a single woman in New York has been difficult for some. There are many who are educated, who are self-aware, who have good interests, good family backgrounds, all of these sort of things. Yet they have a hard time finding a partner. be it a partner for marriage or just for life or a more serious relationship, what advice do you have for people?
The first thing to do is to participate in events where they have special events, either before or after, for single people. They have of all ages. They have for young people. The Weizmann Institute has it. The Friends of the Israel Defense Forces. There are many places who have these events where at the same time that you participate, the Museum of Jewish Heritage has a young people group. So at the same time that you do something good, like raising money for good causes, you meet people who are like-minded. I have nothing against the internet. I have nothing against lunch, making dates for lunch. It's called just lunch. But be careful. Be careful, because on the internet, people can lie. He can say that he's 6 feet tall and has a Jaguar and whatever. You have to be very careful not to give your address, but never to give up, to go to concerts, to go and to take the risk, like the turtle I talked about, to ask a guy, would you like to have a cup of coffee? In the olden days, the Victorian woman, if she wanted a man to pay attention to her, she dropped her handkerchief. Too bad, sometimes the wrong man picked it up, and sometimes that was very sad. The handkerchief remained on the floor. What do I tell that woman? Try again tomorrow. Now, it's very difficult in today's world for many, many reasons that would need a whole evening to find people because the expectations are very high. There are many, many reasons. But not to give up, to go to lectures and to ask somebody, ask him, can you cross me the street? Whatever, find me a taxi. Find some excuse, but be careful. Don't do what I did, saying I'm old, I can't walk over there and then run.
Thank you. In the back. Is there a hand back there, I think?
Yes.
Oh. Sorry.
You know, according to 60 Minutes, seniors live longer if they have sex. But a lot of women are turned off. Is that because they should have a younger man, maybe?
Is that because they should have another man, maybe?
Yeah.
A younger man, maybe. Oh, I see that.
Okay,
The other
I tell
thing
you what.
is, the other thing is, I know that you have a new vibrator out.
Long time already.
Really? How did you happen to design that? Because I heard a lecture about it last week.
Okay,
Two questions.
All right. One is, there is an aerosolator that has my name, it's true, because I was very intrigued. The Swiss guy who came up with an aerosolator instead of a vibrator, aerosolator, is the one who came up, the first one with an electric toothbrush. That intrigued me. I said, I can do that. But I tell women, be careful, don't get used to the vibrations of a vibrator because no man can duplicate those vibrations. But if it helps you, use it. Was the other question something about fantasy?
That 60 Minutes, according to a report, right. But you prefaced it rather beautifully that seniors live longer if they're sexually active. Was that? But a good man is hard to find, right? In other words, is it that if a woman does not feel the erotic tinge as a senior, that she just maybe needs to find a younger man?
First of all, there's a book out that I did with Pierre, Sex Over 50, a very important one. I can't tell you that it just needs a younger man. I can only tell you that it's okay to use fantasy, but keep your mouth shut. A woman, in order to get sexually aroused, she can think of a football team being in bed with her, but she has to keep her mouth shut. She can't tell him. And I don't think it has anything to do with a younger man. I think it has something to do with finding somebody with whom you have a rapport, with whom who lights up when you walk into the room, and with whom you have some intellectual ability to have conversation, which means the worst thing is boredom in the bedroom, and also taking all of your worries into the bedroom. Take all of your worries, your mother-in-law who bothers you, anything that you have worries about, put them in a package, leave them outside the bedroom door. I promise you the package is not going to be taken up by anybody else. It will be there the next morning.
To push, though, the question a little bit further, I just, over the past few days, heard about the FDA approving a female version of Viagra. And I was wondering if you have any feelings about that.
My feeling is, next question, please. I do not know why the Federal Drug Administration would okay that. And I'm not a medical doctor. And I have to wait until I get much more scientifically validated data about such things. There is a whole other thing that we have to, would have to talk about, because it's not the same mechanism in terms of a man and a woman. Let me tell you about Viagra. When Viagra came on the market in this country, I always said you have to go and ask a physician. If the physician says you can take it, have a good time. So here is a husband going to the physician says yes, he takes that blue pill, he comes home. He now has an erection from the floor to the ceiling. He tells his wife, hop into bed. He has forgotten her birthday, he forgot Valentine's Day, and in this culture of ours, if there was a sports event on television, he has not talked to her in 3 days. All of the women here know what that wife is going to tell her husband what to do with that erection. So it has to be in a relationship.
Okay. We have a gentleman in the back, and then I'm not sure, we may have time for one more question down here. Okay.
Hello, Dr. Ruth. I'm honored to be in the room with you. I'm a 46-year-old professional man. And I remember your radio show, Sexually Speaking, when I was a teenager, a boy. And I listened to it religiously, and I must confess that I believe that was where I got my sex education. I saw you, I think, 26 years ago at Harvard College, and I enjoyed hearing you then. And it's been 26 years, so I'm glad to see you again. I've got a two-part question, and I apologize ahead of time for asking a two-part question. The first is, I've since, now that I'm a 46-year-old man, I've started listening to Dan Savage, who's a sex therapist as well. And I was curious whether you were familiar with Dan Savage and what you thought of him.
I wouldn't know.
Okay.
Because, but I tell you something, it's a field that can use many, many, many good sex therapists, no question.
Well, I'm not sure he is
What's
or
the other
isn't.
question?
And the second part of the question is, Dan Savage tends to talk about some things outside of mainstream sexuality. And from what I remember from when I was 15, you tended to talk about a lot of things that were quite mainstream, actually, although perhaps not spoken about. One of the things Dan talks about is this concept of threesomes and menage a trois and that kind of thing. And I'm just curious, what is your position on that, and what are your thoughts on that?
All right, first of all, I'm old-fashioned and a square. I believe in our culture, two people can be two gay people, can be two women, two men, but two people who really love each other. Threesomes don't work in our culture. The people who talked about open marriage, the O'Neills, they said it's all right because if everybody agrees, put your keys of your household, of your house on a plate and take it. Guess what? By the time the book came out, the O'Neills were divorced. So it does, in our culture, it does not work. However, I have a remedy. You have that idea, use it in your fantasy, but keep your mouth shut. Don't talk about it.
We have time for one last question down here. The woman with the bandana.
You mentioned earlier that the sex research field needs to be explored further, and I was wondering what you thought was the future of sex research and sex therapy in general.
What do you think is the future of sex research, sex therapy in general?
Okay, first of all, who here read 50 Shades of Grey? Okay, not required reading, but of course I read it. I'm not going to let somebody say, did you read it? So for some people, and it proves the point that I've been making all the time, but to your question, we need more research. We need more research because it is not true that women don't get aroused by sexually explicit material and by sexually explicit movies. It's just that women want a story. They don't want to see just intercourse. So that it proves. Lady Chatterley's Lover, a long time ago, was one of those books. Fear of Flying was another one. So I'm all for this kind of material that lets people relax and enjoy their sexual experience. But it's not required reading. There are passages in there that you don't like, turn the page. Go to something else. Important thing is to be able to fantasize, but like I said before, to keep your mouth shut. You should never say to a man, my last lover had a bigger penis. Or to a woman, the woman that I had before had bigger breasts and I really like bigger breasts. That's not acceptable. Keep your mouth shut.
Well,
on that we can.
Well, I know that you're about to sign books, but I just want to say that forget about 87. I just hope that even when I get into my 70s, I have a little bit of the energy and wisdom and joie de vivre that you bring. You are such a role model to many of us. Thank you for writing this book, and happy birthday.
Thank you. You're just wonderful.